So we're going to use the quadratic formula. Number one thing, identify your A, B, and your C. So number one, I know we just looked at with factoring, but we're going to go through it because it works out nice, easy, numbers, so on.
Mm-hmm.
What's in front of x squared?
1.
1. What's in front of x?
1.
Negative
5.
5. Negatives are extremely important.
Senora.
And we have 6 at the end. Right where
Senor.
So, you need to identify A, B, and C. Then we're going to plug in the formula. Now, I'm going to write this, and I'm leaving spaces here for a reason.
Oh, they're trying to get rubbed up.
The reason I left spaces is because this right here, this is your formula. It never changes. You've got a negative sign, means the opposite of. You have a little plus and minus, because square root can be a positive or negative. You have the little squared. You have minus, you have 4, and you have 2. That's always going to be there. We got to plug in the numbers that go in place of the letter. So, this says B. What's our B? Negative 5. If it is a negative, put it in parentheses. Because if not, you're going to mess up. Underneath the square root, that says B squared. So I'm going to write negative 5 again in parentheses. My formula says A. That's all multiplying. So I'm going to split it up with parentheses. And C. And on the bottom, A. So all I did was take exactly the numbers A, B, C, plug in the formula. That could be the answer that you're looking for. If it says, which of the following equations could be used to find solution to the quadratic equation? Maybe that's what they want you to do. Okay, can you put numbers in the right places with the right sign? Okay, but we want to simplify a little bit. So, what is opposite of negative 5?
5.
Positive 5.
5.
Plus or minus the square root. I want you to put what's right underneath here, not the square root sign, what's underneath it in your calculator. So, we should have negative 5 squared minus 4 times 1, exactly what you see, times 6. Because the calculator is a tool that cannot help you if you do not enter it correctly. Put it in there correctly. Negative 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6. You should get
1.
If you do not get 1, you need to go and make sure that you entered exactly what you see. The 2 is outside the parentheses. These are being multiplied. If there's a number that's a negative, it needs to be a negative in parentheses because it makes a big difference. This little thing that we did right here, if that comes out to be a positive number, whatever that is, you're going to have 2 answers to your problem. If whatever that is comes out to be 0, you're going to have 1 answer to your problem. If that comes out to be a negative number, you do not have an answer to your problem. Because we cannot take the square root of a negative. So, if you don't have a negative in the correct place, you may think you don't have an answer when you're supposed to. Later, you'll get to complex numbers, which is I. That's why we never use it in our equations. Because it's the square root of negative 1. That's going to be like algebra 2. So if you get a negative under the square root, we're going to say we don't have a solution. Okay, so we know 1 here. What's 2 times 1 on the bottom? 2. So, simplify your expression. Okay, let's go a step further. What is the square root of 1?
Root of 1 is 1.
It's 1.
Shouldn't
You
be.
need to make sure you show your work. Because there are a lot of numbers involved, there's a lot of negatives involved, there's a lot of squared, square roots. If I'm grading it and your answer's wrong, but I can look back up and see that you were right until one spot, then I can give you partial credit for it. But if you just write 2 wrong answers, I don't know where that came from. Okay, so, let's get our answers. We got 2 of them. What's 5 plus 1?
6.
6. So we got 6 over 2, which is 3. We have to do the minus also.
Well, hold on, what is that? Plus with the thing under it?
Plus or minus.
Okay.
When you take the square root of a number, y'all did this in middle school with Pythagorean theorem, but you didn't usually use it to talk about the negative. If you find the square root of 1, everybody said 1. Isn't this also 1?
Yes.
So the square root can also be negative 1. We really haven't dealt with it much until this point, but now we've got to take that into account. That's why you have a plus and a minus. So we got to do 2. 5 plus 1 is 6 divided by 2 is 3. 5 minus 1 is 4 divided by 2, which is 2.
Okay.
Same answers that we would get if we factored. This is another option. Would I pick this over this problem? Probably not. Because factoring is easier. However, we're going to see in a minute that sometimes factoring is not an option. Okay. So that's where your numbers go. 3 and 2 are our 2 solutions. If we put either one of them into the original equation, we're going to get 0. We're going to skip number 2 for a minute because that's the problem. Look at number 3. If I was going to assign A, B, and C, A, B, and C, what's A in that problem?
X. I mean 1.
1, because that's what's in front of X squared. What's B?
Negative 16.
0, because B goes with the X term. There isn't an X term. C is negative 16. Now, if we work that out, we would get our answers. That's not the easy way. Isn't this 16 a perfect square? So, let's factor it. I just wanted you to see that B is 0 here. Okay? X and X, plus and minus. What's the square root of 16?
Square root of 16 is negative 4.
Well, it's 4 and negative 4.
Senor.
So, what makes the first one 0?
Negative 4.
What makes the second one 0?
Positive 4.
There's my answers. If I plug these in the quadratic formula, I get the same thing. 2 options. In this case, this is the easier option. Make it factor.
So if it's a perfect square, we don't have to go through all that you did up there?
If you can factor it period, you don't have to go through all that. Number 4.
Okay. You got me thinking.
A is 1. B is negative 6. C is 9. I can plug those in, I can solve it. But, look at your problem. Is there something that multiplies to give me 9 and adds to give you negative 6?
Negative and a positive 3. No, negative and a negative 3.
2 negatives. Negative 3, negative 3.
So the middle term is negative.
Because it multiplies to give me 9, it adds to give me negative 6.
Senora.
Either one of those places, what's going to make that 0?
Positive 3.
Positive 3. If you were to put this in that formula under the square root thing, you're going to get 0, which means you have one solution, which is 3. Okay. So, those 3 problems you may use quadratic formula. However, it's easier to factor. Let's go back up to the problem here. Number 2. Let's try to factor this. It doesn't look like it would be that hard. What makes up 2?
1 and 2.
1 and 2. We have a plus and a minus. What makes up 3?
3 and 1.
3 and 1. So if I try to plug this in, 3 and 1. Well, 1 times that, that's negative 1 plus 6. Doesn't work. Okay, well, I'm going to switch it. Put 3 here, 1 here. That's -3 and 2. Still doesn't work. That tells me that there's not integer numbers that are going to give me this solution. So factoring is a problem there. This is why we want quadratic formula. So we need our A, B, and C. What's A here? 2. What's B? -8. And what's C? -3. So I tried to do the other way. Didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to do another one. And I'm going to move.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm going to move this out of the way so that I have a little more room. Okay, so my formula, x equals the opposite. Whatever b is, square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. The black part right there, that's your form. Okay? Formula we gotta have. Let's fill in numbers. So, what is our b here? -8, and that's extremely important. It has to be the negative. It's not always. That first little negative means the opposite of. So if your b is positive, you want a negative. If it's negative, you're going to want a positive. So put them both.
Got you.
We have b squared right there times a times c. On the bottom, we have 2 times a. So everything that's in the purple is what we were given in that particular formula.
Why is
In
it
the
always
black,
-4?
because it's part of the formula. That's what works. Somebody way smarter than me figured that out. It comes from all the geometric
Brainiac.
stuff. Well, actually it comes from the triangle and graphing and all of that. But they simplified it down to this is what works. Okay, so let's simplify a little bit. What's the opposite of -8?
-8. 4.
Positive 8. Plus or minus?
Both.
Square root. So let's put this in your calculator. Find out what you get. Everybody check and make sure that you can get that.
88.
Because to get it correct, you have to be able to put it in your calculator correctly. So everybody check it.
Oh, that's 22.
Hmm?
That's 22. Dad?
You can't do that. You will get a 22 if you simplify correctly, but it's not without something in front. We haven't dealt a lot with radicals, but you cannot just take 4 and divide it into both of those, because if something's under the square root sign, it's like its own little protected box there, and you can't mess with that. Now, I want to be sure that we do this correctly. You can have answers in several different forms. We've been all discussing this morning. I've seen one question on a STAR test that the answer was left with radicals in it. Okay? The rest of them, they've asked you to round to a certain hundredths, thousandths, whatever is around your city. So let's make sure we can put this in the calculator correctly. If you get to this point, you have a plus or minus, so we have 2 answers. So let's go to our calculator. Let's put this in and see what you get. You cannot put this in an entire row because it doesn't do the order of operations correctly. Put this in, press enter, then divide by 4. Everybody make sure you can get that. Put that in your calculator.
I'm gonna do that.
What do you think we're doing it? Gotta start somewhere. Put this in your calculator. You're missing your 4 that's supposed to be on the bottom. 2 times 2 is 4. Put in your calculator. 8 plus square root of 8. Just did it right there. So that's the positive. If you put it all in one row, it's only going to divide by your square root. You don't want it to do that. We also have the minus. Which gives us that. So if it's asking you to round, you would have 4.3 and -0.3. Those would be your 2 values.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you simplify your problem from where you are. whatever you get should be there. So if you have got to a certain point and your answers are not in decimal form or a fraction that you can recognize, you need to use your calculator correctly, put the top in, get an answer, divide by the bottom, see if your values match. And I'm fixing to show you what I mean by that. We said, if you put it in correctly, you should get this. Those are your answers rounded. Quadratic formula can be written in a little bit different way. You may get an answer that looks like this.
Oh, you made me write the dogs in it.
Remember which one's in here before. 4 plus or minus the square root of 22. Okay? And I think it's going to be over 2. Okay, that doesn't look like what we got.
Nope.
But the reason is because, several weeks ago, we simplified radicals. If you simplify the square root of 88, you come out with 2 square roots of 22. Okay? So I can take this part right here and simplify that to 2 square roots of 22. Then, Lori, I can divide everything in front by 2. Not the 22, but these. 2 goes in there once, 4, 2. There's my answer. 2 different forms.
What did you do? Oh, divided by 2, okay.
But think about it. If that confuses you, because we really haven't dealt with radicals a lot, and you're looking at a test and you see this, and you're like, I just don't know what that means. But you were at the first step, put this in your calculator. Look. 4 plus square root of 22 divided by 2. Okay? So what I'm saying is, know how to put this in your calculator and get the decimals, because you can compare those. Okay? What I need you to be able to do is to identify A, B, and C, put your formula correctly, simplify it to where all you have is something under the square root. If it's one of those numbers, makes it easy. Take the square root, you're done. Like we did on that first one. If not, leave it. Okay? I will give you partial credit. If you could put things in the correct place and you've narrowed it down from this. Okay, if you kind of get stuck after that, we'll work with it. Okay? So, the reason